Today's demonstration is chocolate chip cookies. To start with today, we're going to mix together some of our dry ingredients. We're going to combine flour, baking soda, and salt together in a small bowl. So for the flour, we need 1 1/4 cup of all-purpose flour, which is just regular white flour. When we're measuring flour, we want to make sure that we're spooning it in so the flour doesn't compact. And then once we're done spooning it till overflowing, we'll use a leveler, or like I'm doing right now, the back of a knife, just to level it off. So there's 1 cup and 1/4 cup. Our next ingredient is 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. Baking soda and baking powder are 2 different things. So make sure you're using whichever the recipe is calling for. This is calling for baking soda, not baking powder. To measure 1/2 teaspoon, I'm just going to dip my spoon in and then use actually the lid of it to just kind of level it off. Add that in with the flour. And then 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Fill that to overflowing, and then use my leveler to level the salt off. I'm gonna go ahead and just give that a quick stir with my spoon, and then set those ingredients aside. Next up, in my mixer, and if you don't have a KitchenAid mixer at home, you can do these steps by hand. It's just gonna take a little bit longer, or you could use a handheld mixer. But once the dough starts getting thick, you'll wanna just switch to mixing it by hand, because the handheld mixer, the space in between the blades is smaller, so once it gets thicker, it'll get stuck. To insert this into the KitchenAid mixer, you'll line up blade and then turn it counterclockwise. And then for the bowl, you'll want to just make sure that it is situated in there correctly, and then make sure to push down the back till it's nice and level. Mine has a handle that goes back and forth. The top might raise and lower. So for this, I'm going to be using some stick butter. And the awesome thing about stick butter is it actually, I don't know if I can get that to adjust. It has little tick marks on it that show you tablespoons and 1/4 cups. 1/4 cup is going to be 1/2 stick, and it does need to be softened. I softened mine in the microwave for about 10 seconds. You do not want it melted. So I'm going to put 1/4 cup of butter into my mixer, and then I'm going to also then measure out 1/4 cup of shortening. So the shortening is kind of a thick, white, shelf-stable fat. It doesn't have a lot of taste to it on its own. It kind of looks like frosting, but trust me, it does not taste like frosting. But it makes the cookies a little bit more tender and a little bit more flavorful than just the plain old butter would. So then I'm going to fill it to overflowing just like every other ingredient, and then level it off. And then I'll use that knife to kind of just scoop it into my mixer. Next up, I'm going to be measuring in my granulated sugar, which is just plain old white sugar. Fill my 1/3 cup to overflowing, and then use a clean knife or leveler to level it off. And then I'm also going to do 1/2 cup of packed brown sugar. Brown sugar, the correct way to measure it is always to pack it. That's just the way that we measure out brown sugar, unless it says otherwise. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to scoop it out, and I'm going to use actually the side of my bag to press it in. And then I'll use my clean knife to level it off. You'll know if you've measured brown sugar correctly if it comes out like a little sandcastle. Pop that in. And then my next ingredient is 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla extract. I'm going to measure my 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla extract over a clean bowl just in case I over pour. That way I'm not wasting the excess. Did a good job. So then I'm just gonna go ahead and put that into the mixer. And then I am going to turn the mixer on and mix it until creamy, or cream the mixture together. Once my ingredients are nice and combined together and kind of creamy, I'm going to put in 1 egg. I'm gonna crack my egg into a separate bowl, just so that I don't get any shells in my mixture. And then I'll pour that in and turn on the mixture again. From here, I'm gonna gradually beat in the flour mixture. So I'm just gonna add it a little bit at a time and then turn the mixer on. Once everything is all combined, I'll go ahead and take my paddle out and remove my bowl. And I can just use a spoon to get the rest of the dough off of the mixer. Mix by hand any additional pieces that might not have gotten mixed in. And then I will go ahead and stir in 1/2 cup of chocolate chips. Now that my dough is all mixed together, I am going to go ahead and put it onto my cookie sheet. It's going onto an ungreased cookie sheet, so I don't need to do anything to prepare the pan. I'm actually going to use a cookie scoop. I like using cookie scoops because then the cookies will all turn out the same size. And the reason this is good is because it will offer more even baking. And I like to give my cookies a decent amount of room when they're baking, just in case they spread apart. I will generally lay out the cookies about 3 by 5 on a cookie sheet. Now I'm going to go ahead and pop these in the oven. The recipe says to bake for 8 to 10 minutes until golden brown. So I'm going to set my timer for 8 minutes and then check them because every oven cooks differently. So we want to make sure that whenever a recipe gives us a varying amount of time, that we're setting it for the least amount of time and then checking it. And here we have our final product of our chocolate chip cookies. They're a nice light color on the top. That's from the shortening. Cookies made with shortening tend to not turn out as dark, but if you flip them over, you can see that they are a nice golden color on the bottom, and they should be nice and soft and chewy and delicious.